Good.
وين هذا؟
Good. It seems the recording has started, so let's start today's session. Today's session is only going to last 2 hours, but we still have quite a bit of elements to see together. So let's get started. So today is going to be the fourth and last part of our React introduction training. Let's start by reviewing what we did yesterday. And you can tell me about any questions you might have regarding that. So let's start by launching our project. First things first. Let's go. Okay.
ايش فيها بالفرن ولا؟
There we go.
والله بحط لكم البيزك اقعد.
Right. This my computer seems to be lagging a bit. There we go. So yesterday, what we did is that we added 2 ways of managing our state. We saw Redux. Basically, what we did with that is that we created this Redux store and we created our dispatchers. So let's take a look at the code. We created a folder called Redux, where we put our store. We saw that everything in Redux mostly revolves around the store, where we need to basically use a function by Redux called create store. So we create our store and we give it as a parameter a root reducer. And since we may want to use many reducers, we use also a function called combine reducers, which will basically take all of our reducers and put it into a single one, only one reducer. So we can then use it to create our store. So we created 2 reducers to use with our store. We created a counter and the games reducer. So we created a basic counter with an initial state, and we saw that a reducer is basically always a function that takes the old state, an action, and returns a new state. So we did that for both a counter and an array, the array of games that we used in our list. We saw that in order to use Redux and access the store from all components, Hanin, can you please mute your mic?
هذا أصفر هذا إيش لون؟
انت احكي لي.
I'm not co-host, so I can't mute anyone. So please, the host, can you mute?
لون أبيض
برافو جدع.
هذا
Miss Noor, can you
لون
please mute everyone?
لون إيش أنت قولي شو لونه؟
انت قولي.
أنت قولي
حنين
Can
حنين
you please
ممكن
mute?
تسكر المايك.
Okay. So let's get back to what we were saying. So we had a game reducer with which we replaced our state in the list page. We saw that in order to access our Redux store from anywhere in our app, we need to basically add it here and put our whole app in the index in a provider, which takes the store as a prop. We then went to our list and replaced all of our logic with instead holding the array of games in the component state. We switched to a logic where we basically map our Redux state to the component's props. And we also mapped basically a dispatcher so we can set the games here from here. Sorry. So we saw how to do that with a class component, but we also saw how to do that basically using hooks by using the use selector and use dispatch hooks that the Redux provides for us, which may be an easier solution. We also saw then as an alternative how we could manage state with the new recoil library by Facebook, using basically use recoil and use state hooks, as well as how to set up our atoms and selectors, which may be a more easy to understand concept than what we saw with Redux. So that's basically what we spent most of yesterday's session looking into. So if you, during your review, you had any questions, please, this is the moment to ask me anything about what we saw in state management before we move on to the next chapters. Does anyone have any questions regarding Redux or recoil? What we should, Sundus asks, what should we use, recoil or Redux? What is the best? Well, it depends on a few things. Recoil is considered to be better with React, but recoil is still relatively new, and I don't think there is a way to link recoil to class components yet. So if you are working with an app that already has a lot of class components, you may want to go with Redux instead. But it also depends on your preferences. But for new projects, I would advise going with function components, hooks, and recoil. That would be my advice. But Redux is in no way a bad tool neither, if you prefer it. Please keep in mind that you don't always have a choice. Like I said, I advise recoil for new projects, but when you're working with clients, most of the time there will be some code base already existing. And if that's the case, there isn't a lot of chances that they are using recoil because it's new. It's too new for production projects to already be in recoil. So you may not have a choice, but yeah, if you do, I would advise going with recoil. It's more lightweight, it's faster, and it's more React friendly. So if there are no other questions, let's move on with today's lesson then. Let's see what we're going to see today. So today is going to be a 2-hour session. And contrary to the 3-hour sessions that we used to do, it's going to last only 2 hours. So we're going to start by looking up some interesting React community libraries. So not official libraries, but real libraries that were made by React's community. Then we're going to finish up basically what we started with this project. Look at some missing CSS, see what features are missing. We're going to finish it up. Then we'll take a quick 10-minute break and we'll deploy our project to a hosting provider called Netlify. And we'll spend the rest of the session reviewing, taking questions, and discussing our React assignment, as well as the past assignment. So that's what's going to be for today's lesson. So let's start by checking out some interesting React community libraries together. So React has a lot of users. As you may have seen, it is now at 12 million downloads a week. So there are a lot of people working with React and a lot of people building a multitude of libraries and sharing them in the community. So before we try to rebuild something from scratch, you may want to check if there are any popular and well-tested open source libraries that are already doing the same job that you're trying to do. So you can win time and focus on things that are more important to the product you are making. So to get us started, I wanna show you a few libraries that I find interesting. We're gonna check Open Doodles, which is basically in an illustrations library. We're going to check React Spring, which is an animation engine for React. And then we're gonna check Material UI for React, which is one of the most popular UI libraries for React. So let's get started with these. So let's go check them out. Let's go check their documentation and let's try to implement them within our project. So let's first take a look at Open Doodles. So Open Doodles for React. And there we go. Basically, it is a free set of illustrations provided by Open Doodles, like you can see in this example, which can be used if you want to build build, for example, a landing page. These are very trendy illustrations. So let's install this and see how we can use these components within our project. So let's first install it. Let's go to our terminal. Let's close up our project and let's install React Open Doodles. Okay, so let's start back up our project. Okay, let's close this up and let's try and integrate basically Open Doodles within our project. So then what we can see is, for example, we can import doodles directly from the library and give them an accent as well as an ink prop. We'll see what that means. So let's go to our code. This is going to be a fairly simple library to implement. Basically, all it does is give us one component per illustration. So let's go, for example, to our list here. And basically, let's look up where we're going to put this. Or okay, so basically, let's put it here. Let's go and have, for example, let's go and have a loving doodle like in the example here. So we can see if it works fine. Let's import our loving doodle in here. Import loving doodle from React Open Doodles and see if that does anything. So let's go back to our project and see if we find anything in here. So yeah, now you might see that we got a huge illustration, which takes a lot of space. Let's maybe reduce it. Let's see if there are any props to reduce it directly from Open Doodles. No, there isn't. So what we'll do is that we'll go here, we'll go to our list, and maybe we'll give it a style object where we'll say, basically, we don't want the height to go beyond 200 or 320 pixels. Let's see if that works to restyle it. It doesn't seem like it's working. So loving doodle, let's see. Here, okay. So it's an SVG. So maybe if we put it in a div, right? Let's go like this and go put it in a div with the styling. So we can enclose it in a small div. Let's see if that works any better. So it doesn't seem like it's doing any better right now. All right. Okay. How can we make it smaller? Let's think for a bit. How can we make it smaller? Okay. So there doesn't seem to be a way to make it smaller, unfortunately, but we should be able to get other illustrations as well. Let's see if we can use another illustration. So here we have a loving doodle. And let's go see what other illustrations there is. Let's see if there is an illustration we might like better. It's maybe something in relation with games or anything. So let's, for example, I don't know, use let's try using this. So it's chilling doodle. So let's try and use this one. Let's try the chilling doodle. Chilling doodle is not defined. Why is it not defined? Oh, okay. Chilling doodle. And let's try and have it go this way. And maybe we'll try changing the colors, the props here. We can have any accent we want. For example, we could have it blue if we go and have 00, FF0, and we can have any color for the ink. We could have it completely black, maybe. 00, 00, 00. We could have the ink completely black. So we can change the ink and accent color however we want using this library, which may be useful if you want to make a landing page. We're not going to keep using this project maybe, but it may be interesting if you're building a landing page, so you can have the type of style that is quite trendy right now with illustrations and stuff like that, since it's completely free. So you can use it for your projects and all. So let's have this. Let's get this out of the way. So basically, this is one of the first examples of libraries you might find. You can find actually millions of those. Another one that may be more interesting, I think it's more interesting, is React Spring. React Spring. This is a very cool animation engine for React. We'll see in a minute how it might work. Let's first add it, install it into our project. Let's add it. Let's go and have npm install React Spring. So as soon as that's done installing, we can take a look at what we can do with React Spring, which can be quite a strong tool. All right. So let's try a few basic animations with React Spring. Okay. One of the few that we can use is maybe an animation for text. Let's go. We close this. And let's go back to our code. What we'll try to do is that we'll go here, we'll go to my cart. Second, it seems my computer is lagging a bit. We'll go to my cart, and basically what we'll do is we'll try to have a message here that is blinking. So let's say we have hello here. Okay, so let's go and do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to our cart page. And what we'll do is that, well, let's get rid of all of this. You have it anyway on GitHub when you're trying to review. I think that makes it harder for us to follow our code. So let's get rid of that. And what we'll do first is that what we want to do is we'll start by creating a state for and which phase of the animation our well, basically our animation is going to be. So what we're going to do is going to create a flipping animation. So what we'll do is that we'll come here and we'll basically create a new state with flip, set flip, using react.use state, and we'll have it be at the beginning at false. So basically it is not displayed. So then what we'll want to do is we'll want to import from string. We'll come here and we'll import use Spring hook from React Spring. And what that use Spring will do is that we'll go here and create a new variable that we'll call animation props or animation style props. And what that will take is that it will take the results of use Spring. So what does use Spring take as a variable? Takes an object, basically, and that object needs to be needs to have certain options. So let's start by giving it its options. First of all, we need to take it where we want our animation to start. So we want it to be to start from a value of 0 opacity. Let's say we want to make a hello that is blinking, that comes and goes and comes and goes into the screen. So we wanted to start from an opacity. Here we're playing with CSS. To animate, we're going to be playing with CSS properties. So let's say we want to start at an opacity of 0, right? And we want to go to an opacity of 1. And then we'll want to say if we wanted to loop. So we'll give it a reset, which is going to be true because we wanted to go and go and come and go, keep doing it. And we'll give it a reverse. And say that the reverse is how it's going to go in the Can you please mute? Thank you. So we'll give it a duration. How much time we want our not duration, excuse me. This is called delay. So this is going to say how much we want our animation to last. So let's say we want it to stay 200 milliseconds. Okay. And then we can go and have, for example, on rest when it's done. On rest, we want on rest to take to be a function. So it's basically what we want to happen when it reaches an end. We want it when it reaches the end of the animation. We want it to change basically the change the flip value to true, which basically means it's going to reverse the animation, like we saw here. So basically, like we saw here, it's going to flip and basically go from here to there. So what we also can have is here is config, and we can have this as Spring config. One thing that is we can add here to get better looking animations, we can add the config here, and we can use Spring can have a set of default configurations that you might add to make your animation look better. I invite you to look at their documentation to know basically all of them, but you would have basically if you wanted to go slow, if you wanted to be gentle, if you wanted to be stiff, wobbly, basically these change how animations go. Do you want them to go basically at the same speed? If you want, for example, to blink fast, to go faster, then it's basically a configuration on how animations may go. I invite you to look at the documentation to know the details, but basically I'm going to use molasses here because I think it looks good. So if I'm not mistaken, we should be done with the configurations. Now all that remains is basically import here animated, if I'm not mistaken. And here we can have an H1. What you see, what we'll do, we'll have animated dot H1. Basically, we're going to use, you're going to do animated dot any HTML tag you want. And what we want to do is we're going to give it a style. And the style is going to be the animation style props that we configured just here. Okay. And then we're going to say here, hello, go digital students. Now what that should do is should add this text and it should be blinking, right? So let's go back to our code and see if that works. As you can see, now what it does is basically it will go, come and go. And that is our animation. We can play with the delay if we want it to last longer or be faster. If we put the delay at 100, for example, this will stay for less time and then go back and disappear. Or maybe we wanted to stay for even longer. We can go and say, hey, you should stay for a second before going away again. So this is cool. Another animation that I think is very interesting is the one we can use with numbers, like here. So let's do that. Let's play with the numbers. I think there is this really cool animation we can do with the numbers, which is basically going to be basically the same as we're doing right now. Let's go and have another one of these, use springs. So we'll go here and we'll change a bit, flip here, we'll change it with flip blinking animation. And we'll show you this with set flip blinking animation. And we'll add here basically blinking so we can know which one it is, and then we'll create a copy of this, and we'll call this not blinking, but we'll say it's counter animation. Okay, and we'll create another useSpring hook with this time, let's say it's not blinking, we said it's going to be counter anim style props, and flip. Let's give this the same thing. So we'll say it's counter. We'll change our configuration a bit. So basically we're going to keep the reset, the reverse, but we're going to say basically, I'm sorry. We're going to say it's going to be from a number zero to basically, let's give it counter. Let's see if that works. Let's say give it here number. Let's not get rid of the 2. Let's say here the number is counter. And what we'll do is that we'll say we'll keep the result, the data true, we'll keep the delay, we keep everything as it is. And then what we will need to do is basically we'll need to animate the same way we did right now. Excuse me. Here we'll have basically this be not animation style props, I'm sorry, but we'll have it counter animated. And what we'll do now is we'll have here instead of this counter here, we'll be adding basically another animated dot span, which is going to be where we'll have our animated number. And what we'll do is that we'll go and have here. Oh, it's going to be the multiplied counter. I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll have this like this and have it go to. And we'll have it go to and dot to fixed 1, and see how that, let's see how that looks basically. Let's see how that looks. Multiplied counter animated is not a function. How is that? Oh, okay. Okay. So this here should be like this. Okay. Let's go here. And now let's see if that works. Yeah. See, now when we add to the counter, instead of changing directly, it gets animated and it flips back. Maybe we don't want it to flip back. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the flipping because we want it to stay at the value it's in. And we'll say reset. We'll get rid of the reset. And we'll say here, let's keep it at 200. And get rid of this. So now it should stay at its value. As you can see, if we go at 40, basically what it does, it goes back, it continues animating in this manner. So I think it's a really interesting animation. It makes things look good. And basically this is one of the best libraries in React when it comes to handling animations. So I think this library is really cool and you should take a look at it. So I don't remember who asked for cool libraries to use with React. So this is definitely one of them. So as the last library we're going to take a look at is going to be a way bigger library. I included in the references of today's presentation links to the documentation of React Spring, Open Doodles, and Material UI. So you can go take a look at React Spring and see what other things you might be able to do with it. I think it's a really cool library to play with. So last library we're going to take a look at is Material UI, which is going to be a way bigger library this time. Material UI React. This is going to be way bigger. Some of you might already know of this library. It's basically a UI library. What it will do, it will give us components that are ready to use for basically creating our user interface without having to do much CSS and styling ourselves. So to install it, as you can see here, they give us a neat function, a neat command. We can copy everything here. So let's go and install it right now. So let's go and install this like this. So this is done installing. So we can get started with Material UI now. Let's get back to our code and see what basic things we might do with it. So now we should have a set of basically of components. Let's take a look at a component we might be wanting to use. Before we head to the code, let's take a look at basically what we want to use as components. As you can see here, we have many examples of components. If you go to components, you have a big list of components. Tables, lists, icons, badges, avatars, so much stuff. Let's go ahead and maybe add an app bar. So an app bar is like this. This is a basic app bar with basically login and buttons and everything. This is an app bar with menu. This is an app bar with search field. Prominent, so much stuff we could have with the app bar. What we also might be able to take a look at is cards and papers. Basically, that's what cards look like. So let's take one maybe and try it. Let's take this. And as you can see, you can also take a look at their codes. Like this, you can copy the edit, show the source code. And what that will do, it will give you a full, basically, implementation of that. So let's take a more basic one for the example. Let's go take a look at its code, show the source code, and we see that we have a box, typography, and everything. So let's copy those. And let's try to implement it in our, maybe, let's say here, we want to add to my card I want to put this in a card. So let's go and do just that. Let's go to cards, import everything we took from the documentation. You see, we'll have basically, we're going to use a box component, a card component, card actions, card content, button, and typography. They're all React components that were made by the library's creator. Basically, what they did is they did our work for us. They went and wrote components. And so they're doing most of our work that allows us to basically win time and not waste it on things we might be waste time with better use on the logic and features and everything. So let's try creating a card like we found the example in the documentation. You'll see here basically this is the card, the basic card with the card content and everything. Let's take it and copy it here. Let's have it go here. And let's see. And what we'll do, as you see here, for example, the card always takes card content inside. Card actions are going to be where we find the buttons. And in the card content, you can basically put anything you want. Let's say here, anything, hello, or anything. And let's see what that does. So we should be getting in our code now a nice card. So there it is, our card. Styled and done like in the documentation. We might be missing some size, as you can see here, so minimum width. But we can easily have that be the width, for example. Let's say here, width be 440. And what that does, it keeps our card to this size. What else might we do? Here they already use the font size. We can have a bigger font size for you guys. Let's say, for example, you can have this at 18. And basically that's it. We can have here, instead of the word of the day, we can take anything we've done here, basically up to now, and we can put it in the card content. We can come here and put everything here. We can take the button and instead take the button here, put it in the card actions maybe, and use Material UI's button. So all we need to do is, instead of using the regular HTML button, we'll be using the button component from Material UI. And that is it. That way we have basically changed this to be in Material UI standards. So this is our card and everything. Every time we click, it's going to say, hello, go digital students. Every time we click, it's going to add to our counter and display the animation as well. There are a lot of components. We won't be going through everything. As you can see here, there is a lot of them. There is navigation where we can get basically buttons like on mobile at the bottom. We have drawers, which basically are going to be like this. You can have drawers here. You can use it with the React router to basically switch from a route to another. You can have so many things. You can have a grid. As you can see here, when you have the responsive, it can handle the responsive for you. You have a component with image lists. So many components you can go through. Like I said, it doesn't make much sense for us to go through them all, but you get the idea. Basically, all it does is that it creates for us components that we can then import. Like we did here, we have a card, we have card content, we have a button, and basically these are going to replace whatever you might want to use in regular HTML. So this will do it for us. Here, for example, H1, we can also replace it with typography, which is basically the way to handle H1s, etc. In here, you can have variant, if I'm not mistaken, and have it H1. And that's basically it for how we can use Material UI. It's relatively simple, but you should have the documentation on hand and basically take a look at it. We can have let's have a smaller variant maybe here. Let's have it be H4. This is too big. Okay. So that's it for Material UI. I invite you, for those who are very interested in the platform, in the library, to go through all of their components. It's a huge catalog, and try them out. As you can see, it's very easy because for every component you see, basically they have the code ready for you that you can check. You can take their code or modify it or whatever. So these are for my top 3 of most known libraries for React. We saw basically an illustration. What is the best way of style React component ways with Material UI? So basically, best way to style components coming from Material UI is going to be through their own in JavaScript. Basically, it's going to be like this. It's going to be when you not through CSS but through style, where you can go here, for example, in the typography, and add a style to it. It can be anything from, I don't know, width or height or background color. Red, you can have this in a separate file like we did in our first React lesson. Basically, if we do that, red, oh, okay, red is not defined. I should put it in a string. Let's go back, and these will work to style them. In terms of styling, this will work. You can also take a look at customization here. Let's search. If you go to customization on any component, you will find examples of how to basically override the styling. But this may be more complex. For example, here, let's take a look. You can have customization using Gsx prop. Using Gsx, you will have basically like the style. You can override nested component styles in a more complex manner, but most of the time you can definitely get away with doing it with inline styling like we just did right now in here.
Mr. Hazim,
So yes?
the bigger components used in Material UI?
Bigger components?
Yes.
So a lot of the components that you might want to use, like we really don't need it here because we did the responsive ourselves. But if you don't want to work with the responsive, like we did, if you remember, we did here in the list, we had our styling in the components here with the game cards. We had styling here where we managed the responsiveness of it to make it responsive. With Material UI, you might not need to do that because we have components in our components here. You might use the grid. Basically, there is a component here. I'm going to zoom a bit to make it clearer. Whoops. Zoom a bit less, maybe. Okay, so you should find a component called grid. What is it? Where is it? Grid. Basically, for the what the grid does, for it uses flex. to give us things. For those who use Bootstrap, you will find it familiar because it will work the same by giving us basically grids like this, going to 12 columns. Like you say, column weights are integer values between 1 and 12. And basically how that works is if you give a div an excess of 8 and another one in excess of 4, basically they're going to take space in this manner, as you can see in this example. So
Using
grids
a grid system.
yes. So this is definitely one of the bigger components that you might use with Material UI is going to be a grid, the grid, to get responsiveness.
I think every project you should use these components.
Yes, definitely. If you're not doing it yourself like we did, because it's fairly not that complex to do when you're doing it yourself. Like you saw, like you see here, we created a grid in a few lines of CSS here. We didn't, it wasn't that hard. We just used flex and everything and it went fine. So definitely flex makes it easy anyway. So for those who want to still write it themselves, I'd say go ahead and write flex yourself. But if you're using Material UI, yes, every project can benefit from using grid to gain time.
Okay.
But I think there are a lot of interesting components. There is the alert, which is quite nice as well to display errors. There is dialogues, which is really cool as well. Dialogues is when you want to open a pop-up. For example, you open here, and what it does, it opens up this dialogue. Dialogues are very useful. You can have an alert dialogue as well if you want to agree, disagree, and all that. Excuse me.
Every action in Bootstrap, I think, converted to components in Material UI.
Yes, and more. I don't know if you know about Material UI. This is a library to implement basically a design system, material design system. It's basically a design system put forward by Google. And
more Bootstrap components?
More than Bootstrap, yes. Look at all of this. Look at all these components. All this. These are a lot of components. And this is for React. There is also another UI library which have even more components, which is called Design. For those who are interested, we won't be featuring it right now, but there is also Design, which is also going to contain a lot of components. Look at this.
Okay.
But they are going to implement different design systems. What's interesting with Material UI is it implements this design system by Google. So it's really cool. It makes your applications basically look like Android applications and Google applications.
If you use many components in your project,
Yes.
Can I have any problem in reloading and in projects?
No, you shouldn't. No, you should. React is made for that. So I worked on production projects where I had hundreds, if not thousands, of components, and it was never a problem. So you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't get slowed down by the number of components. But I tend to agree with Iman Ibrahim, which says grid CSS is better because it decreases the size of library. I agree and I don't agree at the same time because it's true. If you don't use Material UI, it makes your website small, have a smaller JavaScript bundle, and it will make it faster. Not because of the number of components you have and number of components you use, but every time you install a library, every library takes size in your bundle, whether you use its components or not. So basically, now that we imported Material UI, it doesn't matter if we use all of components or not. The fact that we added it to NPM it now takes size in our JavaScript bundle, whether we use it or not. So yes, not using libraries means you only have components that you use, and it will decrease the size of your JavaScript bundle and make your application faster. But if you're going to use the library anyway, it doesn't matter. You should use the grid, and you should use whatever makes you faster. You should use the maximum from the library you're importing, because you're paying for it in terms of size anyway. If you import material UI and don't use the grid, well, it's taking space in your bundle anyway, so you might as well use it.
Every components, I think, because using Webpack less than your code to translate on the page.
Yeah, but I don't get the question. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Every component,
Yes.
you can convert it to Webpack.
Yes, you do. You do, but what Webpack does is puts it in your bundle anyway, right?
Okay. Okay. Yes.
So what Webpack does, it takes all of that code and puts it in your bundle. So if you import the library, Webpack is going to put it in your bundle, whether you use the library or not.
Right.
That's the thing. Otherwise, you can't import from the library.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, that's the issue. I don't know if you guys have any questions before we take a 10-minute break
Okay.
and finish up. No questions? So we have still a few chapters to go through. Like I said, today's lesson is just a wrapping up. We want to review and check things that are useful. We saw libraries. We're going to take a look at deployment later on. So this is going to be a 2-hour session. So we're not going to take 15 minutes, but let's take 10 minutes break and then come and finish up our project, okay?
Mr. Hazem?
Yes?
When I start a new project,
Yes.
what's the best advice to start?
In React?
Yes.
I think the fastest.
You should be to start with components or advice to write a clean code and.
Well, I think my advice for React is always going to be the same. First, if you're going to use a components library or not, depends on when you start the project, you should know what size your project is going to be. Are you building a big project or are you building a small project? Are you building a project with 3 pages, or are you building a project with 10 pages, 15 pages? You should know the size of your project.
And so you should know what your page is.
Yes, you should know what you're building, what number of pages, how many features. If you're going to go with a big project, I say yes, go with Material UI library, go with InDesign, go with any library that makes your life easier. But if it's going to be a small project, I think it's better if you write your own CSS, because you don't have that many pages anyway.
Yes.
In terms of one big advice I'd give you is to read into solid principles. I don't know if some of you heard of it, but you should check solid principles for JavaScript in general, not only React, and it's even more true for React. I put it in the chat for those who want. It's called solid principles. Basically, these are principles for clean and understandable code.
This part in design pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Solid principles build it on design pattern.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what you mean by design pattern, because the design pattern can mean a lot of things. But yeah, it definitely is a subsection of what we might call design patterns, but there are more rules to follow. For example, my favorite one, and I think the one that applies most to React, is the S, which is the single responsibility. What that means when applied to React is when you build a new React project, you should always have a component for single things. You shouldn't have component that does many things. You should always have, every component has its own objective, and you shouldn't have big components with a lot of features.
Yes.
So you should always have, preferably you should have many components that are small rather than a few components that are big. That's my biggest advice in terms of starting a new project. Next, like, make your components small and reusable, and try to your best ability to always think of the question, how can I write less code, and how can I not write the same thing twice? So every time you write the same thing twice, there should be a way to optimize your code to avoid writing the same thing, right? So you should always think of that.
If I forget your advice, I will return to your project to receive what do you want.
Okay. And you can always contact me. Like I said, you sent me a message on Discord. You can always send me a message, and we can even schedule a one-on-one coaching session if you want to talk about this kind of stuff or problems you might be having.
Much love, Mr. Hazem, and I wish you to recovery, and
Thank you.
have a good day. Thank you for everything.
You're very welcome, but don't go yet. The lesson is still not finished. You can, if you
Okay.
can, what is the, so Muath Najar says, if you can, what the right structure of files for any project? For example, news website contains 7 pages. How can I structure step by step, but not doing the project, just the structure? So I think a good structure for React projects is going to be the same that we did in this project, which is going to be basically like this. It's going to be on the DSRC. You would have components, which are basically non-page components, pages, which is going to be their page components. You should have hooks. You should have your state management in a different folder, and your services. I think that is a good way to structure things, no matter the project. If it's a news, a blog, an e-commerce website, it doesn't matter. I think React projects are best structured this way because it's clear. I know where my page components are. I know where my smaller components are. I know where I find my custom hooks, where my services are, and my state management. I think this is the clearer architecture when you're using React, and that no matter the project. A good advice would be structure your projects in a way that you can understand them in 6 months. Because one of the biggest problems when writing a project is that we write it, sometimes you want to add something to it after a long time, and we completely forgot why we wrote the things we wrote and where are things. So you should always write code that you feel that you can understand in a few months. And I think this kind of structure is clear and can you help you find things easily, no matter how much time you spend away from the project. Does that answer your question, Najar? Can I use Jquery in React.js? Okay, I'm going to answer your question with another question. Why do you want to use Jquery in React.js? Just why? Because by default, no, Jquery is not, because some projects have Jquery. Yeah, some old projects have Jquery. Jquery is an old library. People wrote jQuery years and years and years and years ago. Not many people write jQuery nowadays. And basically what jQuery does, you can do it even more easily with React. So it doesn't add anything to your project. Plus, jQuery specialty is editing the DOM, which is incompatible with React because React uses the virtual DOM. And jQuery doesn't understand anything about the virtual DOM. Though, if you insist on using jQuery, there is a library that you want to look at, which is not jQuery, but jQuery React, I believe, which is basically a rewrite of jQuery with React. jQuery, I forgot how it's called.
React DOM replace jQuery.
Yes, React's virtual DOM replaces jQuery. That's why I don't understand why you would want to use them together. I don't know why you would want that, but I think there is a library that did that, where you get jQuery functions in React. But I forgot how it's called. Can jQuery? jQuery is not good with React, I know, but I think there is someone who rewrote jQuery inside React. But yeah, I can't find it and I can't remember the name of the library, to be honest. Bootstrap React, yeah, that definitely exists, though, but I think it's talking about jQuery, not necessarily Bootstrap. You can definitely use Bootstrap for UI with React, Bootstrap React. Default jQuery is not compatible, because Tarek said, React's virtual DOM kind of replaces it anyway. So I don't think there is much use in using jQuery with React, but I think if you look a bit, you can find a library somewhere that basically imports jQuery into React. But no, by default, you can't use jQuery inside of React. And to be honest, myself, I don't see any use of doing it anyway. It is time we let jQuery go into the past, I believe. We have used it for too long. For material UI, we can use media query for normal CSS. As I see in the comments of the material UI, use media query. Yes, we can. It's actually use media query is a hook. You can use it. It's not CSS basically. It's what it does. It replaces this because material UI for React doesn't like CSS. It prefers basically what they call GSS, which is like CSS in JavaScript. But yeah, since in JavaScript there is an issue with doing this, basically, let me take a look. Basically, what that does is replace this in CSS. It replaces the media screen, basically the media query that we use in CSS. Since Material UI doesn't want CSS, you can use the hook that you sent right now to use it in JavaScript. I don't know if that answers your question, Abu Bakr, but that's about it. I mean, there is no CSS here. That's why they use media query. Like I showed you, basically, Material UI really prefers JavaScript to handle styling rather than CSS. Basically, what they use is called, I think, GSS. If you go and look at it, GSS, you should find interesting things. This is GSS. Basically, it is JavaScript in JS. This is what they use. React GSS. That's it. That's what, yes, exactly. Every responsive design would be from the components themselves and not from any CSS or SCSS. Totally, Abu Bakr. That is correct. Because React developers became obsessed with having everything in JavaScript, I think. I mean, React already eliminates HTML files. So people in the community were like, how can we eliminate CSS as well? And there comes GSS, which is basically CSS and JavaScript. And that's what Material UI uses. So yeah, every responsive design is managed in the components themselves in JavaScript, only in JavaScript.
Mr. Hazem,
Yes,
I have a question.
please go ahead.
What is the difference between an extension .gsx and .js?
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, the GSX is supposed to be JavaScript, which contains GSX. So basically what we're doing here with JS shouldn't work for components. This shouldn't work. This should be called the GSX. Okay. This should be called the GSX to work, but it's really cool because in Create React App, Webpack does it for us, which means Webpack changes all the GS to GSX when it is needed. But if you're not using Webpack, you should use GSX if you have GSX in your file. But in this manner, when using Webpack right now, there is no difference. But just because we're using Webpack, which does it for us. Does that answer your question, Mohammed?
Okay, no thanks.
What is the meaning of third-party library? Asks Iman Ibrahim. So what is that meaning? Meaning of third-party library? It means, excuse me. The meaning of third-party library, it means a library that is not official. It is not made by a third-party library in React means a library that wasn't created by the same team that made React. It's called third-party. Third-party means non-official. For example, Redux was not made by the guys at React, so that's a third-party library. Material UI is a third-party library as well because it was developed by other people.
Mr. Hazem,
Yes.
I sent a message in your Discord. Can I share my screen to show what do you have, what I have?
I think it's preferable I call you maybe after this one-on-one so we can talk about it
Okay, no problem.
in detail.
Okay.
But I see you're using PHP in the screenshot you sent me. Because this is not React you sent me, right?
Yes.
So
this part you have JavaScript.
yeah, I know. So after this call, I'll call you on Discord and we take a look together, okay?
Okay.
I mean, okay. Ibrahim, what is for bundle size like Material? What is connection? Okay. I mean, bundle is made by Webpack, Ibrahim, right? So when you add a library like Material UI, Webpack builds it into your bundle so you can use it, right? I mean, Webpack, what it does, it takes all JavaScript in your project and puts it in a single bundle, what they call a bundle, which means a big JavaScript file. And the connection is when you add something like Material UI, Webpack will want to add it to your bundle so it becomes usable. Because when you build, you're going to read from the bundle anyway. So if for example, Material UI has 100 or 1,000 lines of code, that means that Webpack are going to add that 1,000 lines of code to your bundle. So your bundle is going to become bigger because it has 1,000 more lines of code. That is the connection. Every time you add a library, the lines of code in the library will be added to your bundle by Webpack. So it makes your JavaScript bundle bigger. That's basically what it means. Okay, cool. I think some people maybe took a break and are back. So I don't think we don't have a lot of time remaining. So I suggest we move on with the lesson. So let's finish up our project quickly. It will be a cool review as well. Let's finish by adding basically what we want to do. We created this cart page, but we used it mainly to showcase stuff that we wanted to add. What I suggest is that now we add a button to our games here, where when we click, we can add it to the cart. Okay? Let's do that. It will be a cool way to review Redux as well. We'll do it in Redux. So what we'll do now is that, first of all, we'll go to our list page where we have all our games. We have game cards in the game form. Let's go to the game cards. That's where we'll work. Let's get rid of the counter. We don't need the counter. And get rid of this as well. We don't need this now anymore. So let's get rid of this, and it should be still working fine. What we'll do is that we'll add a button now to all utility here and game data, and basically we'll want to add something here, which is going to be on press. And what we'll want to do is that we'll add a button here with basically on click. Let's call it this on click, by the way. On click, it will execute on. It will execute basically another function, which is going to be calling on click, but with the game data. With the game data. Okay. Add to cart. So let's see how that looks. We have an add to cart button now, but it does nothing because we didn't create the function yet. So let's go to our game cards, and what we'd want to do is that we want to add this here, the games data.map, and this will going to be the item or game. And what we'll want to change in here is that we'll want to give it the game, but also a method that we'll call handle game, handle add to cart function. And of course, we'll need to declare that function. This here, okay. Yeah. What's the issue? Okay. All right, so let's create the handle add to cart, handle add to cart, which is going to take data and console.log. Here, we're going to have should add, or let's have an alert actually. Alert game with ID. Oh, maybe let's have this like this. Game with ID data. That ID should be added to cart. Okay. Let's see how if everything works as expected now. Right now. So if we click here, it says game with ID undefined should be added to cart. That's weird. Why is it undefined? Does it not have an ID? Okay, let's take a look. Game data.id. Oh, okay. Let's go take a look at our server when we're loading list here. Are we not giving it an ID? So here, push. Okay, we're not giving it an ID. So let's give it an ID here and give it I as an ID. Okay. So let's try again. Now it should say game with ID 0, game with ID 1, game with ID 2, and game with ID 3, etc. So now what we want to do is we want to add it to our cart here. What we'll be doing is very easy. We'll go to Redux, and that's why I said it's a good way to maybe review Redux. I see Ahmed Abu Bakr asked a question that I didn't see. On design, does InDesign use the same concept for responsive design? Yes, Abu Bakr. InDesign uses the same concept as Material UI for responsive design. So yes. Okay, let's get back to what we were doing. Let's go to our games reducer. And we saw here we have games. So we'll add something else called cart, which is going to be an empty array. And what we'll do is when we create a new action, oops, we'll create a new action called add to cart, add to cart. And what we'll want to do is that we'll want to have cards take state that cards and the new item that we want to add. So this is for our action. So now what we'll want to do is that we'll want to go to our basically our game cards here. And what we'll want to do is that excuse me. We'll want to add dispatch, which is going to be use dispatch from Redux, React Redux. So let's import it. Use dispatch from React Redux. Okay. And now we should be, what we should be doing here is that we'll go and dispatch a new action. Like we saw, an action is always an object. So we gave it a type, right? Let's take a look. We gave it a type add to cart. So let's send it with that type. And we give it a payload, which is basically going to be our data. Then what we'll want to do is that we'll want to go to the cart here, maybe we need to go to the cart. And what we'll do is that we will be coming here. And basically what we'll do is that we'll go and use selector. We're going to go and use Redux here. So we'll be doing constant in games in cart. And we'll do use selector. And what we'll do is that we'll give it state dot games dot how did we call it again? I forget. We called it gr. So state.gr dot cart, which should give us this item in the reducer. So let's take a look and see if we are getting this. Let's take a look and log it. That is console.log, and let's take a look at our games in cards. Okay. Let's see if that works. Oh, use selector is not defined. Let's import it. Import use selector from from React Redux. And it should be good now. Let's add this one and go to my cart and take a look. Let's take a look at the console and see if we get what we expect. So here, yes, we do have one game in the cart, and it's the game left. So everything is working. So one thing we might want to add here. So what we might want to do is add an alert here saying that it's successfully added the game to your cart. Maybe so we can know that it was done. And here now we want to basically display our games. So what we'll want to do is maybe have basically the same thing we did in game cards here. So let's go to our cart and have this. And let's go and add this here. Cards, games, data, the Gsx. And what we'll do is that we'll go and take games and cards here instead of game data. And we'll need to render. This will do, this will do nothing for now. And what you'll want to do is that we'll go and import this from the other components, import from components, game cards, utility. So now we should be getting our Gsx, and we can definitely add it after the card. So let's see how that looks. Let's go to my games list and add a few games, 1, 2, and go to my cart, and we should be able to find them here. And it's done. So now what we might want to do is maybe, since this is done here, what we'll want to do is add another one here to say if you want to add or delete is cart. Let's say if we want to call this from the cart. And here we can have a condition that says if it's not the cart, then show us add to cart, else remove from cart. Okay. And now it should tell us here, instead of saying add to cart in our cart as well, it should, no, it should not say here. Oh, okay. It's because we didn't change it. Let's go and index here and say here false and add to cart. And in the cart here, let's say it's true. Okay, now we have add to cart here. And if we add to cart and go to my cart, we have remove from cart. Now we need to write the remove from cart function. Let's go here. Where is the cart? And maybe take everything we have in here and put it in the cart in a card like we did here. Let's create a card to have a similar looking. Let's go here and have close the card from material UI. We'll put this here and let's write our delete from card logic. We'll go, let's see how it looks first. Okay, looks fine. Now let's go to, let's zoom maybe a bit so you can see. Okay. So now what we'll do is that we'll go, maybe we'll comment this because this takes space, and we'll comment it so you still have the code. And then basically we'll get rid of all of this and all of this, leaving only, okay, now what we'll want to do is want to go back to our reducers with the games and add another action, which is called to be remove from cards. And what we'll do is going to remove by ID. So how are we going to achieve that? We want this to be state.cart.filter, will filter the array, and we'll say for every game, keep it only if the game.id is different from action.payload, basically. So what's the issue here? Expected. Okay, we have an additional, okay. So this should be our remove from cart, and let's add it to our dispatch here. Let's add dispatch. Let's add use dispatch. Let's comment those since we are not using them. And here we'll be using constant dispatch equal use dispatch. And what we want to do, we're going to do another function, handle remove from cart. And we want to do is with an ID. We're gonna take the game here. And what we wanna do is that, or maybe data, to keep it data. And here what we wanna do is like we wanna dispatch a function, a type, excuse me. And we'll go here to our games reducer. It's called remove from cart. So what we do is going to have type remove from cart. And as for the payload, we're gonna send it data.id because we wanna delete by ID basically. Now all we need to do is basically give it here with handle remove from cart, and it should work fine. Where is it? Expected assignment or function at line 84. Oh, okay. What is this? Okay. Let's start this way. Let's go to the games list, add a few games. Let's add this game. Let's add this and add this. Let's go to our cart. See, we have two of them. If we click here, it is deleted. If we click here, it's deleted. We can add a few again. And we can try a different order, maybe start from the beginning or the middle. To test it well, we can start deleting the Empire Strikes Back, and then A New Hope, and then Return of the Jedi. So that completes the workflow as we wanted to implement it in the project. And that acted as a good review, I think, for Redux. So I think we're ready to go to the next and last step of our of today's lesson, which is going to be building and deploying to Netlify. So what is Netlify? So Netlify is really, to me, one of the most amazing web development platforms because it really multiplies our productivity by allowing us to build, test, and deploy websites really easily and really fast. It is a hosting solution. I believe Mr. Safedi taught you about hosting already. And the cool thing about Netlify is that there are a lot of hosting services that allow us for a free version, but Netlify really allows us to also have a custom domain name and HTTPS for free as well, which is really, really, really useful and really cool. So let's take a look on how we might add Netlify to our project in terms of deployment. You'll see that it's really, really easy. Let's go on Netlify's website. I'm going to log in because I already have an account. Okay, so I'm going to log in using GitHub because that's how I created my account. I used it, created it with GitHub. So there you see, I am done. So what we'll want to do is that we'll want to add a new website to Netlify. We'll go to the documentation, or maybe we'll do it directly without the documentation. So what we want to do is create a new site here. I'll show you how we can create it from Git, but for now we'll create it directly from the project, all right? Can you mute, please, Hossein?
Hussein? 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 Hussein?
All right. I mean, maybe we'll keep going anyway. He'll notice the difference anyway. I don't know if you can hear me anyway. All right. It's going to be very easy. What we'll need to do is that first we need to maybe follow on my screen. First, what we need to do is install Netlify. Basically, we'll close our project, and we need to install it globally. So -G. That means install it not on our project but on our machine, and we're going to install Netlify CLI, which is basically a command line tool for Netlify to make it easy to use directly from the command line. So let's install that. Bear with me while it basically downloads. Because it's cool to build projects, but it's even better when we host them and can see them online. Can you guys hear me fine? Yes, Iman Ibrahim.
yes.
Okay. Yes, Iman Ibrahim will use GitHub to connect the Netlify, but I wanted to show you the CLI first. And then I'll show you how to do it directly from GitHub, which is even easier. And it's really cool because whenever you push to GitHub, it does everything automatically. But first, I wanted to show you how we can do it from the CLI. Well, as soon as it's done downloading anyway. So maybe we'll start with the GitHub one first. So how we can deploy from GitHub is basically easy. Like once you're logged in with Git, you say a new site from Git, from the interface. It asks you to create a new website. So I'm going to pick GitHub. It's going to ask me to log in with GitHub. So once it's authorized, you'll see that. So install, I'm going to install it to my GitHub. It asks for permission. And once that is done, it should display the list of my repositories so I can choose from them. Well, why does it not? Okay, so it asked me to pick from a repository. So I have a lot of them, but we're going to use this one, the Go Digital React JS course, and we'll choose the branch to deploy. We're going to use the master. Part 4 is going to be deployed after this. So what we'll do is that we'll go to the master and we'll choose the basic build settings. So the base directory. That's going to be that. We don't need to put anything there. You see it auto detects React and knows that it should run npm run build and it should run and it should publish directory build. So that's really all we have to do. We click deploy site, and it says site deploy in progress. And basically, what this does, whenever we're going to push to our master, it is going to deploy automatically. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. So it's deploying right now. Let's take a look at our CLI maybe. Where it is. Okay, Netlify is done with CLI, so we can do that afterwards. So site deploy in progress. Building and deploying your site to our CDN. So let's see what it's doing. We can actually follow the console they're using to build. You see here that they are installing Node.js. So basically they have a script that will run whenever we push to master that is going to do everything for us, but it's still in progress. So it might take a few minutes. So this is probably the easiest way to deploy, but there is definitely another one, which is this one. Since here, we basically installed Netlify CLI, another way to deploy would be without using the website. What we would do is that we would basically deploy from here. What we'll do is that, first of all, we'll run npm run build to build a production ready version of our website. So we'll leave React scripts building. This is exactly the same thing that's going to run automatically here if we follow it up. So now you'll see it's building. See, it runs npm run build like we are doing ourselves, but that can be done manually from our part using the CLI, of course. So you see here it's running, and here we are running the same thing. So here it says failed to compile. Okay, build failed. Why? Terminal build. What is your issue? Why does it fail to compile? Let's see on our CLI if it fails or succeeds. So in our CLI, it actually succeeds, which is interesting. So we should, maybe Netlify doesn't like warnings. So let's get rid of the warning maybe, and maybe it will work. Let's try and run Netlify deploy. from our CLI, we can run actually Netlify deploy from here. It will open up a page for us to basically log into Netlify. We'll take this and open it in our in Google Chrome instead, because I am not using Firefox. It should still be waiting for authorization. And well, here we say authorize, and you created access to Netlify CLI. So let's go and take a look at what it says now. Link, it says link exists this directly to an existing site, or create and configure a new site. We'll create a new site because we already have the other one we wanted to be kept at basically on GitHub. So choose a unique site. We'll say go digital React course CLI, and we'll publish the directory deploy, not deploy, we'll publish directory build. And well, now, as you can see, since we've done the build here, it doesn't need to do it again on Netlify. All it's going to do is basically deploy our, see, there, it's done. So if we go to our website, if we go back on Chrome, we should find our website here under the link it gave us. See, there it is. If we go to my cart, we should find it, and there it is. It is deployed and ready. As for the auto deploy, I think it doesn't like the warnings, like you guys said. So maybe we should remove the warnings. Let's take a look at which warnings there are. So let's go to game cards index, and it doesn't like no unused words. So let's fix those. Let's fix those. Okay, we have them here as well. So we can go to card.index, and it's which line it said. So it's line 12.3, I believe. Is that it? 12.3 and 13.3. Okay, it's these basically. And what else? It's those and Giant Bomb API in games.js. And services here. Games, and this is not used, so we can get rid of this. And now there shouldn't be any warnings left. So let's try and push this to our Git status. Where are we? We're in part 3, and let's check out that might be part 4. And git push to origin part 4. We're going to push to git add everything, git commit, lesson, React part 4, and we're the 24th of October 2021, and we'll push this. What's the issue here? Oh, okay, git part 4. We forgot the 4. So let's delete it and push it. Okay, let's push it to master now. Master, and let's pull it from 4. And git push. And it should push to master. So let's take a look. It should start deploying again. Guys, please mute. Okay. It's building again, as you can see, because we pushed to master. So let's see if it succeeds this time. But basically, this is how you would deploy to Netlify. Of course, you can use the CLI to go faster if you don't want to use directly GitHub. Ale says the screen is black. Is the screen black right now? Or are you able to see me? Are you seeing my screen? Okay, you see the screen, cool. Let's let it finish trying. Maybe now that we fixed our ESLint warnings, now it will build correctly. So now it's building. Let's see how it goes now that we fixed the warnings. All right, it compiled successfully, and now it should be deploying the site. So the deploy is completed and everything is fine. So we can go and see our website that is deployed by the pipeline. And as you can see here, everything works as expected. So there you go. We have two deployments, one using the CLI and one using basically the GitHub pipeline. The GitHub pipeline is superior because it does it automatically whenever we push to our GitHub. So does anyone have any questions regarding what we just saw? No questions? Okay. So if you have no questions, I will move on to the last part of today's session, which will end soon, by the way. So first of all, I wanted to talk, we're going to talk about our React project assignment, which will start today and last for 2 weeks. So basically you have 2 weeks to be done with it. You have until, the deadline is going to be the 12th November. Excuse me, the 5th of November. So the deadline is going to be the 5th of November, which basically I will write here. Deadline is going to be the 5th November. So we'll get started on a new assignment. I wanted to tell you as well that can you write the steps for deployment to Netlify in slides? Sure. I'll add it here. Okay. Steps to deployment with Netlify. I'll add them here. Okay. Where we should submit the solution. Yes, please. I wanted to talk about that anyway because I didn't receive. I received only 4 submissions for the last assignment. So please, for those who didn't send, you have until today at midnight to send your solutions. Please send them to this address that I'm writing in the chat. Send it to hazm.me@gmail.com. Use the subject JavaScript assignment, for example. But you can also send it to me directly on WhatsApp or Discord, even though I would prefer you send it through email. But just like I said, please use the channel that you would prefer. But please just submit your work so I can review your work. Either this assignment or previous assignment. To the previous assignment, we are beyond the deadline. So for those who didn't send, please send me by today at midnight on my email, preferably. If you couldn't by email, send it through WhatsApp, send it through Discord. There are multiple channels. I'm not talking about the React assignment, Hussein. I'm talking about the previous assignment that we did 2 weeks ago on JavaScript. Okay. We started an assignment 2 weeks ago on JavaScript with the forms and that JavaScript data binding. So please send those. And you have until the 5th of November to send the React assignment. So at the remaining time, let's quickly check what the assignment is. So on this assignment, what I want you to do is I want you to build a weather app from scratch by yourself, using everything that we learned so far. So the steps to doing this is you should start a new app using the create React app script that we saw at the end at this first start of the lesson. You should create a first page to display a list of cities to choose from. Gaza, Tunis, whatever. You are free to add the cities you want. And create a second page where I want you to display the weather in the chosen city in the first page, where you can load the data using the Open Weather API, to which I included a link in the presentation. So use state, props, and Redux or Recoil to pass data between your components and allow for a working product, which ultimately would look a bit like this. It doesn't need to be exactly like this, but basically what I want you to do ultimately is you choose a city and you get weather forecasts for that city displayed in the next page. That is it. That's it. So basically you need 2 pages, and these 2 pages need to communicate basically to send the city for which the API should call. Okay? Do you have any questions regarding this assignment? It should be fairly clear, but do you have any questions? Good. So I'm going to repeat, please, for those who didn't send. We need more time to study. You need more time to study React before doing the assignment. 2 weeks. You feel that 2 weeks is not enough to do this assignment? Najah? You have 2 weeks. You have until the 5th November. It's not as do you think that 2 weeks are not enough? Three weeks. Let me check the agenda to see if that is doable. 1 second. Let me check the agenda because we'll be doing a lot of stuff in the next weeks. You'll have a big assignment that starts later as well. So I'll check. So, well, in 3 weeks, you'll be starting a big assignment. So I'd rather you do it in 2 weeks. And I think 2 weeks is plenty of time. But if you're stuck, you can always reach out to me and we can have coaching so I can help you move faster. But let's keep the deadline at 2 weeks. Okay? I'll re-explain the assignment for you who asked for Muhammad. I will re-explain the assignment. So basically what I want you to do is build a weather forecasting app. Basically, it's a small React app where you can choose your city and it tells you the weather in that city. So I want you to use create React app to start a new app. Create a first page component to display a list of cities to choose from. You are free to add the cities you want. You don't have to have all the cities in the world. You can have 2, 3 cities. Gaza, Tunis, whatever. You can choose 2 or 3 cities. And then I want you to create a second page to display the weather in the chosen city. You can load the data from the Open Weather API, which is a free open API that you can use to get weather data by city. So if you send the city to the API, it should give you back the weather information. I wanted to use state, props, and Redux or recoil to pass data between your components and allow for a working product that will look a bit like this. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but basically you should receive the city from the first page, and then you can show the forecast for a few days. It can be 5, 4 days, depending on what you want. The important thing is that you show the weather, and that's it. Is that clear, Mohammed? All right. Iman Ibrahim asked if we should use classes or hooks. Is it okay to use hooks with this assignment? Yes, it is okay to use hooks with this assignment. It's actually encouraged. If you would prefer to use classes, you can use classes, but I would prefer that you use hooks in this assignment, since basically hooks are going to be more used with React from now on. But you are free to use whatever you want, classes or hooks, depending on what you prefer. You have total freedom with, basically, I want you to see me as a client. I don't care how you do it. All I need is that you do it. I need a working product. That's what I need. I would prefer that you do it with hooks, but as long as it's done with React, and as long as it works, it's fine. Okay? So we are beyond the time for the session. So does anyone have any questions before we leave? It doesn't seem like anyone has any questions. Please send me your previous assignment on JavaScript forms by tonight on my email. For those who have issues and things, pending questions with React, please reach out to me on WhatsApp, by email, or on Discord. I will try to answer your questions or schedule a coaching session one-on-one when I can coach you and answer your questions on React. Okay? Don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can reach out to me, as I said again, on WhatsApp, on Discord, or through email. Don't hesitate. So since there are no questions, I would say thank you for attending today's class. I hope it was interesting, and see you guys next week. Goodbye and have a great day, and please don't forget about the assignment.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, teacher.
Goodbye. Bye.